Hello, and welcome back to History's Hidden Weird, the show where we dig up the strangest, wildest, most unbelievable stories the past tried, and failed, to bury. I'm your host, Quinn Strange. Today we are diving into a scandal so bizarre, so medically questionable, and so thoroughly drenched in turn-of-the-century hubris that it sounds like the setup for a mad science cartoon. This is the Great Monkey-Gland Scandal, the tale of one ambitious Russian surgeon, a medical fad gone global, and the era when wealthy men lined up, literally, for testicle implants from monkeys. Yes. Really. Let's begin. To understand the scandal, we need to meet the architect behind it, Dr. Serge Voronoff. Born in Russia in 1866, Voronoff grew up in a period obsessed with scientific progress and the idea that science could conquer anything, from disease to aging to death itself. He studied in Paris under some of the most respected surgeons in Europe. And like many medical professionals of the time, he became fascinated, borderline obsessed, with rejuvenation. The idea that human aging could be reversed, halted, or even cured. Now, remember, this was a time when people were injecting themselves with all sorts of things. Radium water, cocaine-laced medicines, mercury pills, invigorating tonics that were basically industrial alcohol and hope. No one was exactly cautious. So when Voronoff announced he had a bold new theory, that aging resulted from the decline of endocrine glands, especially the testicles, well, people listened. And more importantly, wealthy, aging men listened. Voronoff's thinking went something like this. 1. Young animals are vigorous. 2. Old humans are not. 3. Therefore, if you transplant the glands of a youthful animal into an aging human, you might restore youth. This is the kind of logic that happens when no one tells a brilliant surgeon, hey, that's probably a terrible idea. Voronoff began experimenting with animal gland transplants. His earliest attempts involved sheep and goats. He grafted their testicular tissue onto the testicles of older animals and observed increased energy and vitality. Kind of. A little. Maybe. Look, the science was sketchy, the notes were optimistic, and confirmation bias was having a field day. He then moved on to humans. Not implants, yet, but castration experiments on prisoners, which already sounds like a giant blinking ethical nightmare sign. He believed he could prove that removing glands accelerated aging and that restoring glands would reverse it. But he knew sheep and goats weren't going to cut it for human rejuvenation. He needed something genetically closer. Which is how we get to monkeys. In 1917, Voronoff transplanted slices, just thin slices, of monkey testicles onto the testicles of a man. And according to him, the results were miraculous. Energy up. Mental clarity restored. Sexual vigor renewed. Hair thicker. Wrinkles softening. Men practically skipping out of his clinic. Were these effects placebo? Extremely likely. Were they scientifically measurable? Not really. Did people care? Absolutely not. Because Voronoff was saying the one thing wealthy, powerful men always want to hear. You can stay young forever. And for that message, they formed a line around the block. By the 1920s, Voronoff had become a global sensation. Newspapers called him the surgeon of eternal youth. Doctors all over Europe tried to replicate his procedure. Millionaires, politicians, opera singers, athletes, everyone wanted a piece of the monkey-powered miracle. Voronoff performed hundreds of these surgeries. He even created a breeding program for monkeys because demand was so high. One French newspaper counted 600 monkeys per year being used for his clinics. There was a period, this is true, when owning a monkey for gland purposes became a status symbol. Because what's more luxurious than saying, "Ah yes, I have a specially selected monkey for my rejuvenation surgery"? He even proposed transplanting glands into women, though he believed testicular tissue could help them too, because apparently his overconfidence had no boundaries. And here's the wildest part. Voronoff's procedure actually became a legitimate medical trend. Doctors who never even read his research were doing monkey gland surgeries. Quack clinics popped up everywhere. Tourists visited the Riviera specifically for rejuvenation vacations. It was big monkey testicle summer, year after year. Now, the problem with miracle cures is that sooner or later, people expect miracles. And as time went on, Voronoff's patients started realizing they weren't getting younger. They weren't getting healthier. And some of them weren't getting anything except scar tissue and a story too embarrassing to tell their grandchildren. Scientists began questioning the results. Studies found no evidence that grafted monkey tissue even survived inside the human body. Some of it was absorbed. Some was rejected. None of it produced hormones. In modern terms, the procedure was equivalent to taping an iPhone to a typewriter and hoping it would start texting. Then the ridicule began. Cartoons, jokes, satirical songs. Comedians joked that Voronoff should branch out into gorilla-grade upgrades. The public went from fascinated to skeptical to openly mocking. And scientific opinion? Let's just say the phrase deeply unfounded was the polite version. By the 1930s, Voronoff's empire collapsed. The medical community turned on him. Researchers published papers showing the procedure had no measurable benefit. Animal rights groups condemned the slaughter of primates. And the growing understanding of endocrinology made it clear that his theory of aging was, well, wrong. Then came World War II, which made gland rejuvenation surgery seem trivial compared to global catastrophe. Voronoff died in 1951, largely forgotten and widely dismissed as a once-respected surgeon who veered into pseudoscience. His monkey breeding facilities closed. His clinics shuttered. And the world collectively tried to pretend that the monkey testicle era never happened. Spoiler, it did. And now you know. You might be wondering, why were people so easily convinced? Well, think about the context. Life expectancy was far lower. Aging was poorly understood. Hormone science was in its infancy. And people were desperate for youth, vitality, and virility. Also, medical authority carried enormous weight. If a respected surgeon said something worked, people believed it. And maybe the biggest factor? Fear of aging is universal and timeless. Voronoff wasn't just selling a surgery. He was selling hope. And hope, especially the hope of staying young, is a powerful, irresistible drug. So what's Voronoff's legacy today? Well, it's complicated. He wasn't a fraud in a malicious sense. He genuinely believed in his work. His early research on transplantation actually contributed, indirectly, to future advances in organ grafting. But he is also a warning. A reminder of how easily science can be distorted when ambition outruns evidence. And a perfect example of why good intentions don't always lead to good medicine. That brings us to the end of today's deep dive into the great monkey gland scandal. If you enjoyed this trip into the bizarre side of history, make sure to subscribe, share, and join me next time for another story the textbooks politely avoid. This has been History's Hidden Weird. I'm Quinn Strange. Thanks for listening. Stay curious. Stay kind. Stay wonderfully weird.